So you talk a little bit how PerfectXL does a lot of software. Talk a little bit more. What kind of software are you doing? What's the resources that help people build better models? Maybe just tell a little bit of what those are.
Again, I guess PerfectXL's core is software with kind of 4 core functions, and those core 4 functions come together to form a sort of suite, and we like to call it a sort of audit or a model validation suite, I guess. So the core underlying principle of our software is simply that we're trying to provide software tools that help people audit and validate models to make them better. So to eliminate risks, mitigate risks, whatever you want to call it, but also to be able to build and develop better models yourself. So it's kind of those two ends of the spectrum. You've got people that send it to somebody that's checking the model. It needs to make their life easier, and it needs to make the life easier of the person actually building and developing the model. Because I guess kind of the underlying idea is we think Excel is a really powerful tool, but Excel itself doesn't invest enough of its resources into providing sort of data and quality and consistency checks, which allows potentially for a little bit too much freedom for the average modeler to be able to do whatever they want. And we kind of want to give tools to help people understand what's actually going on in those spreadsheets.
Is that the reason why Excel alone is not enough, right? They have trace dependence, they have compatibility, they do checks, they now have your formula history. So they've done a few things, but why is that not enough for the average user in your mind?
I think that Excel is gearing their software as much as possible to the average Excel user. And I think what we maybe sometimes in the finance space miss is that the average Excel user also uses Excel to build a shopping list or keeps track of the people they invited to their party, or like a very simple database file. So I guess the average usage of Excel isn't these really complex financial, difficult to understand formulas. So it also makes sense to some degree that the sort of core package of Excel doesn't necessarily contain tools or applications that help at the sort of high end level of Excel. So if you're really calculating return on investments, you're estimating costs and expenses, you're doing P&L statements, and you're sort of at that upper echelon of Excel user, I guess you could say, which in our world, the basic users are already at the upper echelon of Excel use, kind of from a worldwide perspective. It makes sense that if you're sort of at that peak capability within the Excel space, that you need a different level of tools to be able to check and validate those models as well. But I think it's maybe not in Excel's best interest to over index on these kinds of tools. And yeah, I think we try to make our tools sit as closely as possible to how Excel functions. Excel also really encourages a sort of marketplace of providers to be providing these kinds of applications. I think they really like the idea that a lot of different developers from different areas and ideas, I mean, just to name a few, like something like Zebra BI makes some beautiful visuals that you can apply in Excel as well. I'm not affiliated to them at all. Never have used the software extensively myself. Seen some of the stuff they do. I think it's super cool. And I think Excel, just doesn't invest the same amount of time into each specific part because they created this very broad toolkit that can do so many different things, right? So I think if you're really specialized in something, then it is helpful to have more specialized tools. And I think the risk level of the average financial model is just a lot higher than the average shopping list or sort of simple thing built in Excel.
But what if I get the wrong cookies?
You're right. You're right. I think shopping lists also need perfect Excel. That's kind of what it comes to.
All right,
Yeah.
I'll have to try on a shopping list. No,
You should try
I think
around,
you
yeah.
make a good point, right? It's very clear Excel welcomes the developer community. As does Google Sheets as well. And you can build a lot of applications on top of it. There's thousands, probably tens of thousands in different ways, whether they're add-ins or, their own product that integrates with Excel or has an add-in or whatever it might be, because there's so many different use cases. And, Excel wants to build the most flexible, usable spreadsheet in the world.
Absolutely.
And then allow it to be used for thousands of purposes. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the guy in Japan that made a living off doing artwork on Excel.
Gorgeous. Beautiful.
Really impressive stuff, right? Or I'm getting ready to interview a guy by the name of Tom Hinkle for a different podcast I have. And he built Minesweeper using ChatGPT in Excel.
I've played his Minesweeper version in Excel as well.
I have too. I wasted an hour one day reliving my childhood.
That's great.
Maybe even longer. It was quite fun, but I'm like, am I really doing this? I probably work, but yeah. So, right. You name it. it can pretty much be done within reason, obviously.
I mean, that's exactly what you're saying. I think the power of Excel as well is that anything that you can sort of imagine can be done in Excel. But I think in the sort of financial spaces where you're dealing with money made investments, all that kind of stuff, we should sort of encourage each other to limit a little bit the possibilities of Excel in a way. So having some tools that very simply show where potentially something's going wrong, it's not even hard, like, this is wrong, this is not going to work if you've got our tools. It's just purely giving a little bit more insight into things like that structure that we talked about earlier, highlighting areas that might potentially be causing an issue, checking for things like consistency, the stuff most financial modelers want their spreadsheets to look like. It's helpful to have tools that sort of help encourage those best practices and give just a little bit, an easier way to approach that process.
No, I agree. And one way I think about it, I talk to a lot of FP&A software providers, which are building modeling tools at the end of the day. And as I like to say, Excel, spreadsheets always have a place in every company's tech stack. Does that mean you should be using them for everything, right? A lot of these tools have been built to bring in a lot of the structure you're talking about automatically. As I get people ask me all the time, like, I want to get a planning tool and I want it to be as flexible as Excel. I'm like, well, then don't get a planning tool.
Yeah, then get Excel.
Because if flexibility is really the most important thing to you, just stay in Excel. If you can handle the downfalls of having nearly unlimited flexibility, let's talk. Because you're going to trade one thing for another. And I think that's what a lot of people sometimes don't understand, right? That's the kind of the double-edged sword of Excel. It's the beauty and it's also the frustration sometimes when you're like, I always had this guy that you could tell he was a programmer and a coder because he would always write his formulas kind of coding like, and they were different than I would always write them. So it always took me a while. He's one of my employees to figure out what he was doing in his formula because he just thought differently in the way he'd write even basic formulas. And I'm like, why did you do it that way? And it's like using Boolean logic or whatever that comes more from kind of his coding experience.
Yeah, different thought processes.
And it accommodates pretty much all of them. All right. So do you have a favorite functionality in the software you guys offer? Is there something that's kind of your go-to that you're like, I couldn't live without this in Excel?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit like asking to pick like a favorite child or pet, something that everybody clearly knows which one it is, but you're not supposed to say it out loud, I guess, is kind of
Yeah, I'll tell you what my favorite child is. I have one, so it's really easy. Her name's Hay.
okay, yeah, you're cheating. I get it. No, I mean, I think our company was built originally around being able to detect risk in Excel models, and now sort of our case by case view in the risk finder, that functionality that shows an actual screenshot of the issue where it's going on, a little bit more context to what exactly is going wrong in this case. For example, if you've got like a sum that's calculating over a part of a range of cells, it suggests that maybe the other cells should be included as well, with a little bit of advice on how to potentially resolve the issue and the possibility to jump directly to it. I love that little overview because it just feels really clear, easy to explain to someone, and sort of at all levels of Excel, you see people that are like, oh, this is really helpful to be able to quickly jump to and understand what's going wrong in my spreadsheet.